You know those times in the day when you can't fit in a full podcast? Running out to the store, walking the dog, or washing the dishes? Jam is the new way to listen when you have just enough time for the perfect short audio playlist. Get started at listentojam.com/podcast and get your daily Jam playlist filled with more voices in less time. With Jam, you can choose from news, parenting tips, wellness advice, and more. Go to listentojam.com/podcast and satisfy your curiosity with short audio. Discover something new every day.
Get ready, Ohio. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming to the Buckeye State. And to kick things off, you can get started with $100 in free bets as an early sign-up bonus. Plus, when you sign up today with promo code OhioSB, you'll be all set for when FanDuel goes live in Ohio. Then you can bet on all your favorite teams and all your favorite sports with $100 in free bets. Just download FanDuel's top-rated sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Ohio, this is your chance to get in on the action. Join today with promo code OhioSB. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in Ohio. Bonus issued in non-withdrawable free bets that expire 7 days after FanDuel accepts its first real money sports wager in Ohio on 1/1/23. Unique user identity verification required. Offer ends on the go-live date. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason Gravely. Today we are talking to Nicolette Jones and Mark Johnson, who are the first people that we know of to complete a ski traverse of the Colorado Trail. So if you've ever heard of the Colorado Trail, it's nearly 500 miles from Durango, Colorado, way in the San Juan Mountains, all the way to just about to Denver. It's like right on the outskirts of Denver. And it's basically a grand tour of the Rocky Mountains here in Colorado. I say here in Colorado. I'm not there anymore, but there in Colorado. And I've done most of it on bike, and that was hard enough. Tons of it you couldn't even walk. It is crazy to me to think you could ski this and do it skiing, like the danger, the cliffs. It was treacherous in places in the sense of thinking about it covered in snow and ice. And Nick and Mark are going to tell us about this unbelievable experience, how they pulled it off, where the inspiration came from, and getting through the navigation, the emotions, the physical challenge, gear failure and malfunctions, and how they did this. This is so crazy, and why no one's ever done it before. So I'll be honest, this kind of was one of those episodes that I really thought, wow, it kind of hits you. Anything is possible. So congrats to Nick and Mark. They also recently got engaged, which is awesome. So we're going to talk about that as well. I guess if you make it through that and you make it through some of the other stuff they talked about, you can make it through anything. So good luck, y'all, and thanks for being on the show and talking about this crazy adventure. Let's jump in. All right, folks, you heard a little bit about Nick and Mark's story in the intro, but I wanted to welcome them to the show. Welcome. How are y'all doing?
Good. How are you, Mason?
Oh, doing well. So I always ask this first, and I think it's two different places. I'm not sure different towns, but I know it's at least different computers. Where are y'all coming from today, and where is home for you if those aren't the same places?
Right now, I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, visiting my family. They're still in the town that I grew up in, but home right now is central Colorado. I'm in Salida in the summers and Leadville in the winters.
So I'm from Cheyenne, Wyoming. Like, I was born, raised there, graduated from high school there. I'm talking to you from a computer at my mom's house in Inglewood. But I'm with Nick is that I'm usually most at home, like near the Arkansas Valley, like Roaring Fork Valley area. I'm tempted to just say Aspen. You know, I've worked the last job that I've worked there for like the last 7 years is in Aspen as a bike shop mechanic, and I definitely feel most at home there. So
wow, very different place, Cheyenne to Aspen, going up in the world. No, just kidding. Yeah, that's really cool, y'all. Thanks for sharing that. That is kind of all over that Rocky Mountain West. And I used to live in Inglewood, so I know exactly where that is, Mark, but been to all those places. So, Nick, you said Leadville in the winter. Good gracious. You go higher elevation. What draws you there in the winter? Is there anything specific? Is it just the snow or a job? What makes you jump from Salida to Leadville?
Yeah, there's always something bringing me back, but I work at a small ski resort up there. I work at Ski Cooper in the winters. So that's kind of the main reason for coming back in the winters. But really, yeah, the backcountry skiing around Leadville makes it a pretty appealing place to be.
That's really cool. So what I want to hear about is, the story that drew you to the show in the first place, and what started this whole thing off was the first documented ski traverse of the Colorado Trail. Tell us about where this idea came from, who had the idea, what it was like to get ready for it, and maybe some of the reactions. But we'll start with, where did the idea come from based on your backpacking experience or skiing experience? Like you had to have experience here, but tell us about the ideation, because there's usually a story there.
For sure. Yeah, the story that we usually tell people is when I was, I guess in 2020, I was hiking the Continental Divide Trail. Mark came up with this idea while I was on trail that we should ski the Colorado Trail. And when he initially told me, I told him, no, that's ridiculous, because winter camping is terrible. But Mark had never been winter camping at the time. He stayed excited about the idea long enough for me to get on board. By the time he actually had the experience of sleeping in the snow for the first time, I was already fully sold and committed. So we were in for the attempt.
Holy cow, that is awesome. So did you do the whole Continental Divide Trail, Nick?
I did, yeah.
Were y'all together at that time?
Yeah, we were. That was the longest that we had spent apart. We weren't able to see each other for the first 2 months that I was on trail. And Mark was working that summer in Aspen.
Mark, tell us about that. What was that like to have Nick out there on the trail, doing this epic thing, but ultimately away from you? I mean, was it stressful or worrisome or anything like that? Were you jealous? Tell us about what it was like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit embarrassing for me, honestly, is because part of the reason why I wasn't out there was just because I had become so attached to the idea that I don't like hiking. I wish there was a better way to say that, but Nicolette had the idea to kind of do it as like a post-graduation college trip, and I was like, yeah, that's great. Like, you should do that and go on your adventure, and she wanted me to go, and no joke, I was like, I don't really like hiking. I think at that point we had only been dating for maybe a year. So if I had to reevaluate everything, I definitely would have gone. And I do like hiking now. Also at the time I was, I think when she'd had the idea to do the trip was right when the onset of the COVID pandemic had started. And so I guess nobody really had any clue about how long lasting it would be, but I still thought that I might be doing some mountain bike racing that summer, because the previous summer I'd had a pretty good mountain bike race season by my own measure. So I was like, I really would like to get another season, and mountain bike nationals were supposed to be Winter Park again. And I really didn't want to miss out on that. And then the whole season kind of wound up being a wash because of pandemic restrictions. So, if I could go back, I definitely would do it again. And yeah, her being away was hard, for sure. But I think that a majority of Nicolette and my relationship has been long distance. And I would say that generally speaking, when we're further apart, we feel like more resolved in our relationship. So yeah, I was happy that she was out there and doing it. And I think part of the idea to ski the Colorado Trail came from, I think, kind of my desire to do something similar with her. So
wow, that is so interesting. So there's so much y'all both said. If you don't like hiking, I hear through hiking the CDT is a lot of hiking. So that's totally logical. Like, what glutton for punishment if you got out there and you're like, I actually hate hiking, but I'm going to do 2,600 miles of it. But also, Winter Park's right there on the trail. So you could have just said, hey, I'm going to go with you, take a break, do this mountain bike trail. I don't know if the hiking endurance necessarily translates over to mountain bike racing, but yeah, there's got to be something you gain from it, but not always. I used to long distance bike ride and then try to play basketball afterwards, and it was horrible. Just like your muscles, it does not translate at all. But so Nick, that experience, I mean, that had to be a totally unique trail experience. What do you think was different about the thru hiking experience of the CDT through COVID? How obviously probably more or less people out there, but also, that maybe just not interacting with anybody hardly other than other thru hikers, which I don't know if there would be more or less. We have a theory on the show. I know this is a really long question. When there's some sort of recession or some sort of, something like a pandemic, definitely saw it post 9/11 and post 2008 housing market crash. So many more people go on adventures because it's that break or that pivotal moment in their life where they say, you know what, I'm going for it. Was there anything like that with you, Nick? And tell us about the experience of doing it through a pandemic.
Yeah, so I think that first summer after kind of a lot of these COVID restrictions started, the trail was way slower. And then it wasn't until kind of the next year that a lot of the long distance trails saw that boom that you're talking about. But yeah, the year that I was on trail was a really slow year for thru hikers. I think a lot of people postponed their hike. And that was actually the first thru hike that I'd done. So it was, bound to be a unique experience for me no matter what.
Wow, you went for it.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to be able to still get out there and do it. But yeah, based on what I've heard from other thru hikers and how the CDT is growing now, is there's definitely a lot less trail support and a lot less hikers on trail. And I saw very few other hikers. I probably saw, going the same direction as I was, I think I met 6 other hikers maybe, and then I saw maybe 20 other hikers going the other direction, which, I think this year there was something like 3,000 people hiking the CDT. Yeah, those were pretty small numbers, but I mean, it worked out so well for me. That was the right way for me to spend that summer. I think a lot of people who initially postponed kind of their like outdoor recreation for that summer ended up regretting it after kind of seeing how the summer played out, and just dealing with COVID restrictions were a lot easier when I was just living outside, and it was really easy to stay healthy and minimize my contact in a way where I didn't feel like I was like putting other people at risk.
I bet there were so many nights and days that were pristine, and the solitude, the wilderness, nature being more comfortable to be near the trail because the lack of people. I bet that was maybe the best year to do it. And not only that, but for your first thru hike, you jump into the most desolate of the Triple Crown trails, the highest elevation. And considering COVID, gosh, I bet you saw some really cool stuff.
For sure. Yeah, it was such an incredible experience. Yeah, I feel so lucky to have that experience in so many ways. And yeah, like you said, just being able to, I don't know, just worry about like what I was eating and where I was getting water and where I was camping every day felt like such a luxury compared to some of the things that people were worried about, like living in bigger cities or dealing with the pandemic in a much different way than I was.
Yeah, sounds like you dealt with it in a great way. Mark, how was the summer in Aspen during that time?
The Aspenite crowd is obviously like pretty unique. And I would say I experienced much more during the pandemic. What you were talking about is, I think, for a lot of like the hyper rich people, which, just for clarity, I'm not part of that class. I live in a car there. Yeah. But that it definitely, the pandemic provided everybody who had the means to just kind of like swarm the city and be like, we can't be in New York City, so we're going to go to the mountains, which I think pretty much all mountain towns, it was a big problem in Crested Butte and even places like Boulder. Like I know that there were several kind of like I don't know, controversial like articles in like outdoor magazines about people from larger urban areas going to Boulder and like misrepresenting like the experience that people generally have in the Colorado Rockies, just from like a city perspective. I don't know if there's a better way to say that, but yeah. And I mean, circling back to the bike racing thing, and why I didn't join Nicolette. The previous year at Mountain Bike Nationals, I gotten fourth place in like the single speed category, and it's surprisingly competitive. Like there's actually a couple of like legitimately professional racers that go and do it. And so I was just kind of hoping that another season of training and everything could enable me to like get to my goals. And so I just didn't feel like the hiking was totally in line with that, which I think might carry more weight to it than like, I just don't like hiking. Although I will say I joined Nicolette for several weeks in New Mexico on the CDT. And there was at least one, I don't know if fight is the right word, but disagreement over me just wishing I was on a bicycle on a dirt road instead of hiking. So I don't know if Nicolette has anything to add to that.
Yeah, that was definitely a good learning experience for us. Kind of some of the first backpacking we'd really gotten to do together. But the CDT is a lot of road walking. It's like the way that people talk about the CDT in terms of long trails is that you go through some of the most like beautiful places in the country, but you also go through some of the most boring stretches of hiking, which is just like walking along dirt or sometimes even paved roads in the middle of the desert. Yeah, Mark was only able to join me for really like 2 weeks, and there's a lot of road walking for those 2 weeks when he was out there. And so I don't think he was sold on hiking or on through hiking by that experience.
I suppose to really answer your pandemic question of what it was like there in Aspen is it was crowded. There wasn't the bike racing opportunity that I was hoping for. But, hindsight's always 20/20. We have expected that pandemic wasn't the best for bike racing.
Not the best, or the best in the sense less competition, but also races were few and far between, if anything. So, all right. So Nick, you through hiked the CDT, as we've been saying, and Mark, you got to watch from afar. And after that experience, tell us about the, coming up with this idea. You did mention the idea about where it came from, that experience, but what was getting ready for this like? What was time of the year? Like, I know you did it in the spring. Was that from the beginning what you wanted to do? And what was some of the unique considerations? What skills did you have to learn to feel prepared for this? Because I'm not going to lie, it feels pretty daunting to me, but I'm not much of a cold weather person. Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. Today's podcast is sponsored by Let's Get Checked, a worldwide leader in at-home health tests that put you in control of your own healthcare. What I loved about Let's Get Checked is it gives you the freedom to understand what's happening with your body with their 30-plus at-home tests, everything from men's health to women's health to general wellness checks to looking up if you have certain conditions or not. It's amazing how wide the range is, and you don't even have to leave your home. You don't have to set up an appointment, go across town, wait 6 weeks to get some simple test done. It comes right to your house, easy to follow instructions. You put in whatever sample is needed for the test, put it back in the box, it ships back out, and within 2 to 5 days, you have results. And you can even schedule a follow-up call with one of their doctors, one of their clinicians that can go over any abnormalities or answer any questions you have. And in some cases, the clinical team can even prescribe medication, which can be sent to the pharmacy of your choice. If you would like to try one of their 30-plus at-home tests, use the URL link in the show notes at trylgc.com/ASP and use the code ASP25 at checkout for 25% off. Again, that's ASP25 for 25% off at the link in the show notes. I've really enjoyed the process of getting some tests done that I've always wanted to, but just didn't feel like going through the hassle. But it's important. It's important to do. And I think you're going to enjoy it too.
Hey there, BreezeLine has a holiday gift just for you. 1 month of free internet for all your family's gift sites, book flights, and movie nights. Get reliable, fast internet with speeds starting at 100 megabits per second for just $19.99 a month. Plus, free Wi-Fi your way home for the first 12 months. And your first month is free. BreezeLine wishes you all a happy and bright holiday season. If only they could give you a little holiday relief from all the matching family outfits. Service subject to availability. New residential customers in select areas only. Visit breezeline.com for complete offer details.
Get ready, Ohio. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming to the Buckeye State. And to kick things off, you can get started with $100 in free bets as an early sign-up bonus. Plus, when you sign up today with promo code OhioSB, you'll be all set for when FanDuel goes live in Ohio. Then you can bet on all your favorite teams and all your favorite sports with $100 in free bets. Just download FanDuel's top-rated sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Ohio, this is your chance to get in on the action. Join today with promo code OhioSB. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in Ohio. Bonus issued in non-withdrawable free bets that expire 7 days after FanDuel accepts its first real money sports wager in Ohio on 1/1/23. Unique user identity verification required. Offer ends on the go-live date. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Love Target? Well, you're about to love it even more. With Target's Red Card debit card, you'll save 5% every Target trip on top of everyday low prices, in-store and online. Debit Red Card links from your existing bank account. Visit target.com/redcard to get all the details. Restrictions apply.
That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
Sometimes I always joke that like Nicolette is the expert and sometimes I'm the sidekick. I would say that Nicolette possesses a majority of like the hard skills as far as what we needed out there. And I was kind of thinking about this question actually before the interview. And I think one thing that we can really give credit to is when we went to school at Adams State University in Alamosa, Colorado, Nicolette was in like the outdoor leadership minor. And actually, you know, that's like, I think where we both, me just by proximity, some of our first like real introductions to some of the hard skills that we wound up using out there, like just the experience of winter camping in general for Nicolette and backpacking and the kind of where like some of our risk management philosophy came from and everything else. And as far as like the impetus for the idea goes, I think it was definitely me kind of trying to reach out after opting not to go with Nicolette on the CDTs. I was like, well, I don't know. I think that there's something that I could do with her that we would both be really excited about. That's where the idea came from. And I think where a lot of the skills started.
Nick, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think like what Mark was referencing is that this was definitely a trip that was going to challenge like skills that we both had. I had only been backcountry skiing for like a year, really, maybe, just a year before when Mark came up with the idea. And then by the time we actually were on trail, it had been a couple years more. So Mark had been skiing for a little while longer, and I had become really interested in long distance travel like this. And so it was definitely obvious that it would be a really good way to challenge ourselves and challenge like some of the skills that we had. But definitely we knew from the onset that really like learning to winter camp was going to be the biggest challenge in preparing for the trail. So that winter before we did the trail, we spent like almost every one of our weekends just like lugging all of our stuff out into the snow somewhere and like setting up camp for a night and like, you know, maybe skiing a couple laps and then, you know, like trudging back out and drying out all our stuff and trying to figure out what worked and what didn't.
Yeah, that. And then also Nicolette was pretty insistent that we both have our ARI level 2, that we both completed our ARI level 2 avalanche like safety courses, which was a good idea. And that's also why we chose to do it in the springtime, was obviously for the avalanche risk. But, you know, as far as snow specific thing is, we took the avalanche courses and you just got to spend a lot of time skiing in really crummy conditions.
Golly, man, that's wild. Tell us about some of the the planning for this around, because I read some of your trip reports and what you've written, and one thing that really stuck out was how important the community was and how you don't think you could have done this without people's help. Did you know that going in when you were planning? Were you saying, oh, it's going to take, the emotional support of friends, seeing friends on a regular basis? Because, with the winter, especially higher latitude, somewhere like Colorado, it's shorter days, gets dark really, really early. So you have a lot of darkness. What was the plan? Did you anticipate needing friends and having that support? And if not, do you think you would have made it without it?
Yeah, I think from the onset, we were pretty ready to kind of utilize our friends in the area to just help logistically, just planning resupplies in the winter. We knew that it would be really helpful to have people helping us, and we were ready to take that help. I don't think we realized how emotionally important that would be. Yeah, we knew that there would be certain challenges in being out for this long in the spring or like in the snowpack in the winter backcountry. I don't think we really anticipated or understood until we were out there just what like the moments between the people that were helping us and us really would mean to us.
Yeah, and like as a reference, we saw more people on sections of the CDT or of the Colorado Trail when we were preparing, like in the middle of winter, than we did when we were actually out there. Like there is pretty much nobody on the trail in the month of April when we did this. Like, I think we saw one group of snowshoers near Tennessee Pass, like another group of 4 skiers near Monarch Pass. And then we saw some people at a hut near Leadville. And then we did not see literally anyone else on the trail until we got to, like the Junction Creek area of Durango, which was surprising because they're heavily trafficked areas. Like we didn't even see any snowmobilers.
Jeez.
Lots of snowmobile tracks. But the other thing too about our friends is, I think it made us feel really fortunate too when we were planning the resupplies that we had friends at nearly like every stop who could just who could meet us there. We had a friend in Denver drive us to the trailhead, a friend in Summit Cove who let us stay at his house, just and on at nearly every single stop. And so it was like, okay, like we're super lucky to already have kind of like the infrastructure of people who know about us and care, who love us and care about us, and are ready to help just there. So
what was the reaction that people had when you told them you were going to ski the Colorado Trail? Were people, I mean, what was it generally? Oh, that's really cool. Or like, yeah, you definitely shouldn't do that.
There were kind of several reactions we got. I think leading up to it, I didn't tell a lot of people. I don't know. I feel like maybe Mark was a little bit more communicative, but just because it was such a lofty goal for us, I didn't go around telling people that we were going to do it. I don't think it was until maybe like we had maybe gotten like 300 or 400 miles in that I started saying that we're going to ski the Colorado Trail. Up until that point,
out of
it was
500 miles.
Yeah, exactly. Up until then, it was always like, oh, we're going to try to do a ski traverse of the Colorado Trail. And then going into it, I really only talked to the people who we were like asking to help us about it. And so a lot of those people that were closest to us were really supportive and excited about it.
It was that we both had a really big fear of failure and of being like, we're going to do this epic thing, and then just totally like falling flat on our faces over, maybe some seemingly like insignificant detail that actually like ruined the whole trip. And then everybody being like, so those were the people who said that they were, who told the whole world that they were going to do this and then just like didn't. And then, I had a friend who had told us a while back, like just in relation to bike racing goals too, is that like sharing your goals, like psychologically feels just as good as doing them. And so I think we were kind of trying to avoid that mental trap of like telling people that we were going to do something that was important to us instead of actually doing it. So
that's interesting. But yeah, I can definitely see that telling people about it is sometimes psychologically just as gratifying as doing it until you actually do it. Then it's like, okay, this
Sure,
is...
yeah. I mean, it feels good to tell people like, we're going to do something incredible. And people are like, wow, that is incredible. And then, you can walk away from that interaction and be like, yep.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely describes our experience leading up to it. So all of that to say is that by the time we were actually talking to people about it, either like we were already doing it or it was a pretty select group of people. But we generally like kind of categorized the responses that we got into three different categories. And there's like the people who we really knew and who were excited for us and who kind of understood like why we were trying this. And then there's people who just kind of have no concept of what we were doing, which to some degree was us leading into it. It's like we didn't really know how hard it would be until we were out there. And you just kind of get the like, damn, that's crazy response. And then there's people who don't really understand, but yeah, maybe like you mentioned, Mason, who were like, I don't know about that. Seems kind of dangerous. We got asked a lot of questions about how we were going to manage risk out there and like whether it was like really safe to do. But I think a lot of times too, people were just unimpressed. Is that like so little understanding of, or like ski traverses in general are just not very popular. And so just talking about doing a ski traverse at all, people are kind of like, oh, that sounds kind of weird.
Yeah, like telling somebody that you did like a continuous ski traverse of the Colorado Trail, like you might as well have told somebody you did like a continuous rollerblade of the Iditarod or something. Is like they're like, all right, that doesn't seem like a thing. And so, and I guess maybe it's not, but I think it's surprising given the fact that it's been hiked, hundreds of thousands of times and mountain biked a similar amount. It was surprising given Colorado's connection to skiing that as far as we are aware, nobody has done like a continuous start at one end, finish at the other end, one push on mostly snow, like in skis as the primary form of transport.
So I've done most of the Colorado Trail and on a bike actually, Mark. And so probably similar to the style you would have preferred to do it, but it was not easy. And I can't imagine all that covered in snow, what it was like. How was route finding? How was dealing with avalanche risk? Tell us about that difficulty. Was it difficult to stay on course? Were there places that weren't covered in snow? What did you do when you came across that?
I'd say like route finding and navigation took up a majority of our energy on trail. I mean, that and self-care. But, when we were hiking in snow, like below tree line, I think we spent a lot of time just looking for the trail, like looking for physical markers, whether it was like blazes or cut logs. I would actually have dreams at night about like walking through the trail corridor and like seeing, like trying to like look for the trail. Because you just like, it's one of those things that when you see it, sometimes you can like stay on it for a really long time. And then all of a sudden you'd like lose it and you'd just be like wandering through the trees. And we'd be getting out our GPSs. So we used our phone GPS for navigation. We use Caltopo, but just like a GPS map, topographic mapping app. Avalanche risk was an ongoing assessment. Hiking in the spring was like our biggest or like the best way to mitigate a lot of that avalanche risk. But there was some pretty substantial reroutes that we had to take where we were looking at the terrain ahead of us, looking at the map and like looking at the weather conditions. And, we were like coming into Hope Pass, for example, there had been a big storm the night before and Hope Pass is this like north facing feature. And we looked at it and it was just like totally wind loaded. And it's a pretty steep pass. And so we were like, we can't, that's not a reasonable risk for us to take. So we did this like 20-mile reroute. We hiked around the like fin that Hope Pass is connected to and then back up a dirt road to get back to the trail there. So we were making those decisions pretty regularly. And a lot of times having to do, or not a lot of times, but there were like 2 or 3 major areas of the trail where we like Hope Pass where we had to do an avalanche reroute. But mostly day-to-day, like avalanche risk, we weren't seeing like red light avalanche conditions, or we weren't on like red light avalanche terrain where we really had to worry about that. And then just generally, we, started every day, like looking at our maps, seeing like where the official trail went and then where like it made sense for us to travel. And then, yeah, like you said, there's definitely parts of the trail that just didn't have snow, or where the snowpack, we would be like in a transition zone. So we'd be like hiking down to like Cochetopa Pass, for example. It was really intermittent snow. And so there would be like 20 yards of snow that was all like 5-foot drift for 20 yards. And then it would be like bare for 20 yards. And that was some of the slowest travels. That was so tedious. And there was, we were traveling in the springtime too. So there's all these like down trees over the trail as well. And so navigating, like patchy snow, down trees, there'd be like times where we were lucky if we were moving like 1.5 miles an hour. And that was like moving 1.5 miles an hour, or like moving the whole time. We were like barely moving 1.5 miles an hour. So that could be really tedious. And deciding whether we should have our skis on or off, or just be booting through, or whether we should have skins on or be like trying to slide downhill or slide over the top of the snow was certainly like a pretty taxing endeavor, just making decisions on how to move through that terrain and that snow.
To compartmentalize it, something that I said actually pretty frequently to other people who had a similar question is, of the 485 miles of trail, I think that we were like just doing outright snow travel for like 300 to 350 miles. And then the rest of it was just, hiking in the spring. But, even if there was within 20 miles of hiking in the spring, there would be like 1 mile of snow travel. Like we really needed the snow travel equipment nearly every single day. Otherwise, I would have considered it to be at least impassable. And then, the avalanche reroutes. I think that we did the 2 major reroutes. The one that Nick was talking about with Hope Pass, and then near Mullis Pass, we did another major reroute around a section of trail. But I think that those were really, other than those 2 reroutes, we were really like on the actual trail for, I would say, at least like 95%, if not like 98% of the whole thing. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Nick.
Yeah, I think so. The actual trail is relative because there's just some spots where it would be like the trail kind of meanders below ridgeline, and it makes sense to travel on the trail, when it's summer. But like in the spring when we were traveling with snow conditions, it would just make sense to like stay on the ridgeline or stay where there's snow. And so there was a lot of like little decisions like that where it was like, since we had the spring snowpack, we might just travel like straight across a valley rather than doing like a big contour around it.
You had that ability to create your own path sometimes too. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Tell us about what was unexpected, like an unexpected benefit of being able to ski the trail. Was it like the downhills where you just kind of, go a little quicker, or was it something else? Tell us about an unexpected joy or benefit that you came across.
Any time that we were actually skiing felt like such an unbelievable win. Like so much of the skiing was just, honestly not that great. But anytime we were, it would be like cheering and high-fiving to be able to like cover, a mile of ground on skis, like actually just, gliding along the snow. But I don't know if I would call that an unexpected benefit. I'm trying to think of, there were times out there were lots of unexpected drawbacks, but I'm trying to think if there was any time.
I was trying to stay positive, but I imagine there's more unexpected negative than positive.
Yeah, I'm sure that there was definitely some point where it was like, like we wouldn't be, it was, I think that maybe the most, like Nicolette was saying, to your previous question, it was kind of nice when the trail would like kind of, crescent moon around a basin, like traverse the high, and we could just like ski straight down one side across and then just skin up the other and go straight line. And we actually would maybe go like marginally faster, or at least less slow than if we had just kept our skins on and traversed around. I don't know if Nick can think of an unexpected benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest benefit of doing it is something that we've referenced already, but just what a unique experience it was, is that like is that there was nobody else out there. As it turns out, like April is probably the least traveled month on the Colorado Trail based on our experience. And just to like be in the backcountry in the winter, is there were just some spots like, especially I think in the West Collegiate Loop and in the South San Juans, where we were just in these like incredible wilderness places, and nobody had been out there for months, or like we skied down this drainage north of Cottonwood Pass that it felt like nobody had ever skied down it before. We were off the official trail at that point. That was part of our kind of like Hope Pass reroute. And it was crazy to be there. We had gotten up at like 3 a.m. to hike up this high alpine drainage, and there was like a full moon, and we get to the top of this drainage at sunrise, and we're like surrounded by the Apostles, and like we can see Mount Huron and like Ice Mountain, and looking down this drainage where there's no trail, but we're gonna like ski down it and connect back up to the trail on the other side was pretty incredible. And so that experience, I think, was the most unexpected benefit, biggest benefit of doing it on skis really is that it is such a unique and beautiful experience. And I think for me over the past couple of years, like discovering the backcountry in winter has been such an amazing part of the way that we're living right now, and of learning to backcountry ski, and getting to do the ski traverse really felt like a culmination of that.
What did you, what you describing that sounds amazing. 2 questions here. How did you deal with the shorter days, with it getting dark so early? I guess it was getting longer then. Well, actually, when does time change?
Yeah, I think the time did change before we.
Oh yeah, it's in March.
Yeah.
And the other thing too was that sunset on average was like around 7 o'clock when we were doing it. So they weren't that much shorter. But what happened that made our days actually shorter was the afternoon sun would just turn the springtime snow into the most like awful substance on earth, like just like knee-deep post-tolling collapsing slush. Like, as we pretty much every single day, I think our goal was to be like done moving through snow by like 3, because it just wasn't even worth it at that point. So we were doing a lot of like wake up at like 3 a.m. and be at camp by 3 p.m.
Wow. What would you do for the remainder of the day?
I wish I could say we just relaxed, but one of the realities of like winter camping is that there's just so much gear to manage, that like our time at camp was always busy, and our goal was to be at camp at 3 p.m. But often, the snow would get soft before we expected, and in order to make it to like where we wanted to camp, we would still like have to slog through snow for a couple hours, and then actually like scouting for camp or like finding water was often really challenging. Like finding and collecting running water always took like quite a bit of time before we got to camp. And so just between like all the camp chores, we were still, it would be like, we were ready to sleep whenever we were done with them. So like as soon as, we could kind of get all of our gear organized, get like our camp set up, get dinner cooked, eat, and do everything else that like we needed to just to kind of like maintain our basic level of self-care. Maybe we spend some time like looking at maps or something, but we were ready to fall asleep.
Yeah, getting up that early, I imagine. You were pretty exhausted pretty early.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And the analogy that I always use for like what Nicolette is saying with the gear management is like, even when I go on a hut trip and there's like, this serene little cabin with like a ripping wood fire and, a mudroom to dry out your stuff, is it's like you get out from a day of skiing at the hut trip and like drying out your skins and boot liners and managing all your gear and cooking dinner and stuff can feel overwhelming. Or at least to me it can. And like definitely trying to do the same thing from our like floorless tarp was the kind of extreme of that gear management at the end of a day of skiing.
Wow. Did you deal with any storms or any blizzards or anything like that where you just had to stop? And if so, what was some of the worst weather you faced? Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
Yeah, it was a relatively dry spring. You know, we didn't see as many storms as we might have, but we definitely had to deal with a few storms. Really, the coldest we ever got, and I think the only time where we were like, we bailed off the trail and we were like, we have to like bail down to the trees and make camp now, was coming over Georgia Pass. There was a storm coming in, and that was like our first day really in the Alpine on skis. And we came over Georgia Pass at like 6 p.m. maybe. And so we were like already pushing into the evening, and then it was like snowing and blowing wind, and we were above tree line and we were route finding. And it was like our first time on trail, kind of managing all of these issues and then managing them all at once. And, you know, we got to a point where we were like, okay, we're not going to make it to tree line on trail tonight. We just need to ski down this slope and get to tree line and make camp now. And like that was the coldest I've ever been, is like we were making camp, and there's like a point where we're like stomping out our spot, and we're getting in the tent, and like we'd gotten in the tent and I was just so cold that there was no part of me anymore that was like cold. It wasn't like, oh, like, you know, my fingers are really cold. Like I had warmed up enough that it wasn't like I wasn't feeling the sensation of cold anywhere, but I was just still shivering. Like I just couldn't stop shivering until we finally like got some hot drink in us. And then for the lack of snow we saw this spring, it was terribly windy. And I would say that was the hardest weather phenomenon for us to deal with. You know, they said it was one of the windiest Aprils on record in Colorado. And so just day to day, dealing with the wind while we were hiking, you know, we would try to take breaks in wind sheltered areas, but it was really just a mental test most of the time, hiking through the wind. I don't know, are there any other memorable storms for you, Mark?
No, all I can do is add on to that experience on Georgia Pass. It was seriously kind of the most intense moment of the trip from like a danger perspective. You know, we did like some steep skiing and like other, you know, stuff that was like, I don't know, like intense, you know, I guess there's some moderate like difficulty or danger involved. But that moment is like, you know, we had been hiking in our ski boots in the mud earlier in the day when it was like warm, as the storm was like, you know, blowing warm air over or whatever. And then like once the storm got there, all the mud like froze into the like tech binding pinholes on our ski boots. And so there's this moment where we're like hunkered down behind this tree and like ripping winds, bona fide whiteout conditions, and like we had ripped skins and we couldn't click into our skis because they were like frozen full of packed mud. And so we had to like pull out our tent stakes and like scrape, like we're hunkered down behind this tree, like freezing cold, like trying to like get mud out of the tech pinholes in our boots. It was, I would say, like actually pretty scary. And, you know, we had to that evening use one of like our kind of last ditch options for getting warm on Nicolette, which is like, you know, and we didn't have water that night either. So we were just melting snow with our little isobutane stove, which for anyone who hasn't done that is just painstakingly slow. Like when we talk about camp just taking more time, like that night we probably spent straight up like 5 to 7 hours just melting snow the entire night to get like all the water that we needed for camp. And so to warm Nicolette up, we'd like melt snow to the point that it was boiling hot, and then fill Nalgings with the boiling hot water and stick them in Nicolette's sleeping bag to like actually get warm, which is pretty effective. But you know, definitely felt closer to like the true danger of that trip, which is just like, you know, well, if our stove had broken or something else, you know, we had our inReach or whatever, but it's also just like at the point, you know, if you hit the little inReach button, it's the middle of a snowstorm in the middle of the night. Like it's not like the cavalry is coming out to the middle of the Colorado backcountry at 11 p.m. to save, you know, somebody who's freezing. That would I say would be like the most extreme moment of it for sure.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Yeah, y'all do make this before telling this story. You're making this seem way too easy. Like y'all's demeanor is just like, yeah, we just went out and did this. And not going to lie, this is a very daunting adventure to me. That I don't think I would ever do this because of the cold, because of exactly the story you just said. That sounds, that's like a nightmare to me. So, yeah, I'm surprised you weren't facing that more, but to even hear that one experience, I imagine it got pretty serious pretty quickly. So the 27 days you were out there, I don't think we mentioned that, just under a month. What do you feel it did for y'all and your relationship? Did you feel like you got closer? I did read that you just ran out of things to talk about a lot of the time. But what did it do for y'all as a partnership? Because that's quite a thing to put yourself through.
Do you mind if I speak first, Nicolette?
Go for it.
Definitely when we were out there, we were like backcountry and ski partners more than romantic partners. Like that was just the dynamic for sure. It was certainly a luxury to be out there with your romantic partner, but I would say like most of the communicating that we were doing and everything is how I would like communicate or interacted with any ski partner that I was out there, which is just like I think how the relationship needs to be when you're in the backcountry like that in general. From that standpoint, and we would always joke too. We had an interaction at like a retail store where we were like shopping for skis and kind of explaining what we were doing. And somebody was like, wow, this will really be a test for your relationship. And so we'd always kind of like jab at each other about that. But, I don't think it was any more testing of a romantic relationship than it would be of just any ski partner relationship.
Yeah, and I guess as far as like how it's affected our relationship, I feel like it's worth mentioning that we did the ski traverse in the spring, and then this fall we got engaged. So long term, I feel like it's been a contributing factor to just strengthening our relationship.
Awesome.
But a couple years ago, Mark's dad died, and we took care of him in in-home hospice care, and I think that was like the most challenging thing that we've ever done together. And so, Mark was talking about like when we were shopping for skis, the guys being like, "Oh, this is going to be such a test on your relationship." And I don't think that we at all felt like our relationship needed to be tested. That we had kind of had experiences that had where we've been able to prove to ourselves that our relationship could take like whatever the challenges that we were going to face, but that doesn't mean that like we didn't face challenges while we were out there, but certainly I felt like that those challenges built resilience for us, and I don't know, just continued to provide us that perspective that our relationship can withstand certain hardship, and that we're willing to push through hard times, and that we can achieve goals like this together.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for that backstory too. Going through that real life challenge together, makes voluntary adventures like the one you did, honestly, not a piece of cake, but much more manageable. And that's what I tell people on the show. It's like, I don't know if I can do this adventure. That's so, I want to do something like this. I don't know if I got it in me. And I'm always telling folks, like, your real life experience, whether that's, dealing with a situation like that with your dad, Mark, or raising kids, or going through getting fired, or a breakup, anything like that, gives you all the things you need to do a lot of the adventures we talk about. It's really just applying those skills and applying that resilience or determination to biking or hiking or getting through a landscape. It's so transferable, and that's really cool to hear that it was your foundational experience of a challenge together, then putting it to the test on an adventure, and ultimately, yeah, it sounds like things progressed to the point you got engaged. So that's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Totally.
Like that's totally the case. Like anybody, if you can raise a teenager, you have the mental tenacity to do a ski traverse of the Colorado Trail. Real life is so much harder than outdoor, fun.
That is so true. And we're always trying to say that. It's like, when you go and do an adventure, it's voluntary. You know, this is voluntary, quote, suffering or obstacles. You don't have to do this. So I'm always blown away by, you know, my parents or folks that are dealing with that stuff that they don't necessarily sign up for, yet they have a positive attitude, yet they're dealing with it with such grace and strength. That's honestly the most inspiring. It's just people don't want to hear podcasts about that. Well, I guess they do. There are plenty of podcasts out there, but we're talking about taking those skills and putting them in the outdoors. Tell us this as we wrap up. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with, either the biggest lesson or one of the biggest lessons you learned on this experience, or what's next for y'all? Tell us about it. Any closing remarks?
Yeah, I think we feel like really, really lucky to have been able to do this. And I guess for me, one of the biggest lessons maybe from this and from through hiking in general is that it feels like, just staying on that theme that you talked about like what it takes to take on adventures like this, or just to take on adventures in the outdoors, is it certainly feels easier once you've done one to start dreaming of and doing more. Is like, just while I was out on the CDT, is that we were able to dream up this plan, and then doing this has opened up so many more doors and made it feel so much more possible to do other things. And so I think just taking that first step and really having this experience now, one of the things that I value about it most is just that it has opened up so many other possibilities. And now, like, winter camping and ski traversing are a reality for us, and we can look forward to and plan other adventures.
Anything for you, Mark?
I was just going to say the one thing that I guess, want people to take away from the trip is, like, if anybody has any ambition of doing this, of doing a ski traverse, the Colorado Trail, it's very possible, probably not as hard as you think. And, like, I don't know, the things that I would consider that you really need to have is, like, you need to be good at skiing in bad conditions, like a good foundation on avalanche safety, and, good winter camping skills, and then good backcountry snow navigation. If you have those 4 things, like, you can definitely do it. And anybody who has the ambition to try, like, please reach out to us. Like, I want to see other people do it, and maybe for it to become more of a thing.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
With Eversense, the long-term sensor helps me spend less time dealing with my CGM. I only need 2 sensor changes a year.
If you're on multiple doses of insulin, you might greatly benefit from the Eversense E3 CGM system, the only continuous glucose monitoring system that lasts for up to 6 months with 1 sensor. Still doing frequent sensor changes? Break free today with Eversense.
For important safety information and to learn more about Eversense, please visit eversensediabetes.com/safety.
Shop JCPenney for thousands of deals so low, no coupons needed. Through Sunday, get up to 75% off fine jewelry. Bring home Cooks and Black & Decker kitchen electrics, now $22.99 plus $10 mail-in rebate. And get Memorex home electronics starting at $27.99. We got your holiday.
Shop, JCPenney.
Offers valid on select items through 11/27. Excluded from coupons. Conditions and exclusions apply. See store or jcp.com for details.